Captain Zara stood at the helm of her ship, the Perseverance, gazing out at the vast expanse of stars. The Galactic Confederation had sent countless teams to Altaria, all of whom had failed or never returned. Yet, here she was, with a hand-picked crew of humans and alien specialists, ready to face the galaxy's most dangerous predators. This was no ordinary mission. It was a test of humanity's place in the galaxy. "The Confederation thinks we're crazy," Zara muttered to herself as the planet Altaria loomed closer on the ship's viewfinder. Known for its hostile environment and predators so fierce that even the bravest of alien species kept their distance, Altaria was off-limits to most. Yet, humans had a knack for the impossible. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Harris, a no-nonsense soldier with a knack for strategy, joined her on the bridge. "We've got clearance to land." "All systems go," Harris reported, his eyes scanning the readouts. "Good," Zara said, her voice steady. "Prepare the team. We land in 10. As Harris relayed the orders, Zara took a moment to reflect on the mission. The Confederation had granted them access to this forbidden planet for one reason. They believed only humans were crazy enough to try to tame Altaria's beasts. Zara wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an insult, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the mission, and proving that humanity's resilience could stand up to anything the galaxy threw at them. The landing on Altaria was smooth, but the tension in the air was palpable. The landscape was both beautiful and ominous, with thick forests, jagged mountains, and skies that seemed to shift color with every passing second. As the crew disembarked, Zara surveyed her team. Among them were 2 alien specialists, Dr. Nex, a Selvari biologist with 6 arms and an endless curiosity, and Quorv, a Grakun tactical expert with an intimidating stature but a surprising sense of humor. The rest were human, all hardened by years of exploration and combat. "Remember the mission," Zara said, addressing her crew. "We're not here to kill anything. Our goal is to study these creatures, learn how they operate, and if possible, establish a form of control. We don't use force unless absolutely necessary." Dr. Nex clicked his mandibles in what Zara had come to recognize as nervousness. "Captain, the Razcan is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's a predator that defies classification. Are you certain we can?" "We can," Zara interrupted, her tone leaving no room for doubt. "Humans have tamed the untamable before. We'll do it again." With that, the team moved into the dense jungle, each step taking them deeper into the heart of the unknown. The air was thick with humidity, and the sound of alien wildlife filled their ears. Harris kept his rifle ready, while Dr. Nex scanned the environment with his advanced biosensors. Hours passed, and just as fatigue began to set in, the team came to a halt. Ahead of them, in a clearing, was their target, the Razcan. The creature was massive, its scaled body gleaming in the faint light filtering through the trees. It resembled a serpent, but with the muscular build of a lion and the reflexes of a viper. Zara held up her hand, signaling the team to stop. "This is it," she whispered. "Harris, take point. Nex, get ready with the tranquilizer." The plan was simple. Harris would distract the creature while Nex and Quorv moved in to subdue it. But, as with all things on Altaria, nothing went according to plan. The Razcan moved faster than any of them expected. One moment it was lying still, the next it had lunged at Harris with blinding speed. He barely had time to dodge as the creature's jaws snapped inches from his face. "Move," Zara shouted, drawing her weapon. The team scattered, but the Razcan was relentless. It pursued them through the jungle, its tail crashing through trees as it gained on Harris. For a moment, it seemed like the mission would end in disaster. But then something unexpected happened. As Harris sprinted for cover, Zara noticed a pattern in the creature's movements, a rhythm, almost as if it were responding to something beyond sight or sound. Could it be? "Everyone, stop," Zara ordered. Harris, out of breath but unharmed, froze. The Razkan did the same, its massive form coiled like a spring, ready to strike but waiting. Zara stepped forward cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. She reached for a small device on her belt, a harmonic frequency generator that she had designed specifically for this mission. If her theory was correct, the Razkan wasn't just a mindless predator. It was responding to frequencies, and as she could find the right one, she activated the device, and a low hum filled the air. The Razkan's eyes narrowed, its muscles relaxing ever so slightly. Zara adjusted the frequency, watching in awe as the creature began to calm. "It's working," Dr. Nex whispered, astonished. But just as Zara felt a glimmer of hope, a new danger emerged from the shadows, a second predator, even more deadly than the first. "Fall back," Zara yelled, but it was too late. The jungle erupted into chaos once more, and the mission was far from over. The jungle's eerie quiet was shattered as the second predator, a massive Sharnax, emerged from the shadows. It was larger than the Razkan, with scales that shimmered like black obsidian and eyes that glowed a menacing red. The team had prepared for one dangerous creature, but now they faced two. The Sharnax roared, the sound echoing through the dense forest, and every instinct in Zara screamed to retreat. "Harris, take cover," Zara commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. Harris dove behind a massive tree as the Sharnax charged forward. Its massive claws ripped through the jungle floor, uprooting trees in its wake. The Razkan, previously their target, now seemed less of a threat in comparison. Zara acted quickly, turning to Dr. Nex. "We need that frequency generator working on both of them. Do you think you can tune it?" Dr. Nex's mandibles clicked rapidly as he fumbled with the device. "I can try, but I need time." "Time we don't have," Quorv growled, his massive frame standing between the Sharnax and the team. He hefted his plasma rifle, ready to defend his human allies with his life if necessary. "Get it done, Nex." As the Sharnax closed in, Zara's mind raced. They couldn't take on both creatures head-to-head, and retreating would mean abandoning the mission entirely. But humans were nothing if not resourceful. "Harris, create a distraction," Zara ordered. Without hesitation, Harris threw a sonic charge into the air, the high-pitched whine causing both predators to pause. It wasn't enough to drive them away, but it gave Zara the opening she needed. She ran to Dr. Nex's side, helping him recalibrate the harmonic frequency generator. The Razkan's earlier response had shown that these creatures weren't mindless. They could be influenced, controlled even. But the Sharnax was a different beast altogether. The Sharnax's roar grew louder as it shook off the effects of the sonic charge. It charged again, this time directly at Quorv. The Grecon tactical expert stood his ground, raising his rifle and firing a volley of plasma shots at the creature's head. The bolts of energy barely slowed it down, its thick scales absorbing most of the impact. Zara's heart pounded as she worked with Dr. Nex, her fingers flying over the controls of the frequency generator. Come on. Just as the Sharnax closed the distance, Dr. Nex let out a triumphant hiss. "Got it." Zara activated the device, sending out a powerful harmonic pulse that filled the air. The effect was immediate. Both the Razkan and the Sharnax stopped in their tracks, their massive forms swaying as if in a trance. The jungle, once filled with the sound of crashing trees and roaring predators, fell into an eerie silence. "It's working," Zara breathed, hardly daring to believe it. She glanced at Harris and Quorv, both of whom looked equally astonished. The two most dangerous creatures in the galaxy now docile under the influence of a human-made device. Quorv lowered his rifle, but he kept a wary eye on the predators. "I can't believe it. You humans, you really did it." Dr. Nex was still furiously adjusting the settings on the generator. "We need to keep this frequency stable. If it fluctuates too much, we could lose control." Zara nodded. "Harris, Quorv, stay alert. We're not out of this yet." As the team regrouped, Zara took a moment to study the Razkan and the Sharnax. These creatures were fierce, deadly, and intelligent, but they were also predictable in a way. The frequencies had calmed them because, like many predators, they responded to environmental stimuli. The key wasn't force, it was understanding. The Razkan, now subdued, lay coiled in the clearing, its eyes following Zara's movements. The Sharnax, though still imposing, had stopped its rampage and now sat back on its haunches, watching the humans with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. "We did it," Harris said, breathing heavily as he stepped closer to Zara. "I can't believe we actually did it." Zara smiled, though it was tinged with exhaustion. "It's only the beginning. We've proven we can control them, but now we need to figure out why they respond to these frequencies, and if we can replicate it on a larger scale." Before Zara could continue, a rustling sound from the jungle's edge caught her attention. Her hand instinctively went to her sidearm as she scanned the trees. Something was out there watching them. "Everyone, stay sharp," she whispered. "We're not alone." Out of the shadows emerged a small, wiry figure. It wasn't another predator, but a humanoid, one Zara hadn't expected to see. The figure stepped forward, revealing itself as an alien native to Eltaria. Its eyes glinted with intelligence, and it wore primitive clothing made from the hides of local creatures. "Who are you?" Zara demanded, her hand still on her weapon. The alien looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and wariness before speaking in a language Zara didn't understand. Dr. Nex, however, stepped forward, his mandibles clicking as he responded in kind. The two exchanged words for several tense moments before Dr. Nex turned to Zara. "They're the original inhabitants of this planet," Nex explained. "They've been living in secret, avoiding the Confederation and the predators alike." The alien spoke again, this time gesturing toward the Razkan and the Sharnax. Nex translated, "They believe these creatures are sacred. They've been trying to protect them from outsiders like us." Zara's mind raced. This new development complicated things. The mission had been about taming these predators for research and potential control, but now she had to consider the native population and their connection to the creatures. "We're not here to harm them," Zara said, speaking slowly and clearly. "We want to understand them." The alien nodded, though it was clear there was still mistrust. Zara glanced at her team. The mission had just gotten a lot more complicated, but that didn't deter her. If anything, it fueled her determination. "Let's pack up and move back to base," Zara said, her voice firm. "We've got a lot to figure out." As the team prepared to leave, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The predators of Eltaria were dangerous, but the secrets they held, and the native people who protected them, were far more intriguing than she had anticipated. The journey back to the base camp was quiet, but the weight of what they had encountered hung heavily over the team. Zara couldn't stop thinking about the native alien and their relationship with the predators of Eltaria. The mission was no longer just about taming these creatures. It was now a delicate balance of diplomacy, survival, and discovery. As the Perseverance's camp came into view, Zara knew they needed a new plan, and fast. "Everyone, inside for a debrief," Zara ordered as they approached the central tent. The team gathered quickly, still shaken from the earlier encounter with the Razkan and the Sharnax, but eager to hear what was next. Zara paced in front of them, her mind racing. "We've made significant progress with the frequency generator. We've proven that we can calm the predators, but we've also uncovered something much bigger. The native population, whatever their motives, sees these creatures as sacred." Dr. Nex nodded, his mandibles twitching thoughtfully. "They've been living here for centuries, hidden from the Confederation. They must have developed some kind of connection with the wildlife. I believe they may hold the key to fully understanding these creatures." Quoth crossed his arms, his imposing frame casting a shadow across the room. "So what now? We can't just ignore the fact that we've been sent here to tame these beasts for research. But if we antagonize the locals, we risk starting a conflict." Harris, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. "We can't treat this like a normal mission. The usual methods won't work. We have to earn the trust of the natives, and if we're lucky, they might teach us how they survived all this time alongside the predators." Zara stopped pacing and looked at each of her crew members in turn. "Exactly. We need to approach this carefully, but we can't abandon the mission. Our primary goal remains to understand these creatures and, if possible, control them. But now we have an additional objective, establishing communication and trust with the natives." She turned to Dr. Nex. "Can you work on refining the frequency generator? We'll need it if we're going to continue interacting with the predators." Nex gave a quick nod. "I'll modify the settings. We need to ensure it doesn't just calm the creatures temporarily, but allows us to maintain a steady control." Zara then addressed the rest of the team. "Harris, Quov, we'll need to make contact with the natives again. We can't proceed with the mission until we have their cooperation. We'll offer them a trade, information and protection in exchange for their help with the creatures." Quov's face remained stern, but there was a glint of approval in his eyes. "It's risky, but it's the only way forward." Harris chuckled. "We're already deep in this mess. Might as well double down." Zara smiled, feeling the familiar spark of determination that had gotten them through countless dangerous missions before. "All right, let's move." The next day, the team set out to find the native alien they had encountered the day before. They followed the tracks left in the jungle, the dense foliage making the journey slow and grueling. The oppressive humidity weighed down on them, and every now and then, a distant roar or screech reminded them of the dangerous predators lurking just beyond the trees. After hours of trekking, they found what they were looking for. In a hidden valley, nestled between towering cliffs, was a settlement. It wasn't large, but it was well organized, with huts made from local materials and the unmistakable presence of the native aliens moving about in quiet, purposeful ways. Zara stepped forward cautiously, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. The native they had met earlier emerged from one of the huts, flanked by several others. Their expressions were unreadable, but there was no immediate hostility, only curiosity. Dr. Nex stepped forward to act as the translator, clicking his mandibles in the alien's tongue. A tense conversation followed, with the native occasionally glancing towards Zara and her team. After what felt like an eternity, Dr. Nex turned to Zara, his eyes gleaming. "They're willing to talk. They've agreed to let us stay for a short time, on the condition that we don't harm the creatures or their territory." Zara breathed a sigh of relief. "That's a start. Ask them what they know about controlling the predators." The conversation continued, and gradually, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The natives had developed a unique bond with the predators over centuries, using a combination of environmental manipulation, pheromones, and, most intriguingly, sound frequencies similar to what Zara's team had been experimenting with. They used natural harmonic frequencies in the environment to communicate with the creatures, Dr. Nex explained. "It's a form of non-verbal communication. The predators don't see them as prey because they're able to synchronize with their biological rhythms." Zara's eyes widened in realization. That's why the frequency generator worked on the Razkan and the Sharnex. It's not just calming them, it's creating a form of dialogue, however primitive. The native leader, an elder with deep-set eyes, spoke again, gesturing toward the dense jungle. Nex translated, "They want to show us something. A place where their ancestors first discovered the connection with the predators." Zara nodded, "Lead the way." The team followed the natives deeper into the jungle, past towering trees and winding streams, until they arrived at a massive stone structure. It was ancient, overgrown with vines and moss, but still standing strong. The air around it felt different, charged with an energy that Zara couldn't quite describe. "This is where it all began," Dr. Nex said quietly, translating the elder's words. "This place holds the key to understanding the predators." Zara stepped forward, her heart racing. She had always believed in humanity's ability to adapt, to survive, and to overcome any challenge. Now, standing before this ancient monument, she realized that the answers they sought might not only lie in human ingenuity, but in a deep connection with the natural world around them. "Let's see what we can learn," Zara said, her voice steady. "This is just the beginning." The ancient structure loomed before them, its stone walls covered in intricate carvings that hinted at a long-forgotten civilization. The natives stood at the entrance, their leader gesturing for Zara and her team to follow. The air was thick with anticipation as they stepped inside, the atmosphere growing cooler and more mysterious with each step. Inside, the structure opened into a vast chamber, lit dimly by shafts of sunlight filtering through cracks in the ceiling. The walls were adorned with more carvings, depicting the predators of Altaria in various forms, some peaceful, others terrifying. At the center of the room was a massive stone altar, upon which lay strange devices made from materials Zara had never seen before. The native elder approached the altar and placed a hand on one of the devices, a circular object that emitted a faint hum. Dr. Nex stepped closer, his curiosity piqued. "This device," Nex said, his voice full of awe, "it's similar to our frequency generator, but older. Far more advanced than we thought." Zara watched as the elder activated the device. The hum grew louder, filling the chamber with a resonant sound that seemed to vibrate through her bones. The stone walls trembled slightly, and Zara could feel a shift in the air around them. The native leader spoke again, his voice calm and measured. Dr. Nex translated. "He says this is how they communicate with the predators. It's not just sound. It's a blend of frequencies that mimics the natural world. They believe this place holds the secret to controlling the creatures, not through force, but through harmony." Zara was amazed. For centuries, the Confederation had viewed the predators of Altaria as uncontrollable, yet here, in this ancient chamber, was the key to taming them. It wasn't about domination, it was about understanding the balance of nature. The natives had lived in harmony with these beasts for generations, and now that knowledge was within Zara's reach. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook, a deep rumble that echoed through the chamber. Zara's instincts kicked in, and she drew her sidearm, her eyes scanning the entrance. "We're not alone," Harris muttered, gripping his rifle tightly. Before anyone could react, the massive form of the Sharnax appeared in the doorway, its red eyes glowing with fury. It must have followed them from the jungle, and now it stood between the team and their only exit. The creature let out a deafening roar, its claws scraping against the stone floor as it prepared to attack. "Fall back," Zara shouted, but there was nowhere to run. The chamber was a dead end, and the Sharnax blocked their escape. Quav raised his plasma rifle, ready to fire, but Zara held up her hand. "No, we can't use force. It'll only make things worse." Dr. Nex's eyes darted to the frequency device on the altar. "We need to activate it fully. It's our only chance." Without hesitation, Zara sprinted toward the altar, her heart pounding in her chest. The Sharnax roared again, advancing on the team. Harris and Quav stood their ground, weapons at the ready, but they knew Zara was right. Fighting the creature would only end in disaster. Zara reached the altar and placed her hands on the device. It felt warm, pulsing with energy. She glanced at Dr. Nex, who was frantically adjusting the settings on the frequency generator they had brought with them. The two devices hummed in sync, and Zara could feel the vibrations intensifying. "Now, Zara," Nex yelled, "activate it." Zara took a deep breath and activated the ancient device. A powerful wave of sound erupted from the altar, reverberating through the chamber. The Sharnax froze mid-charge, its eyes narrowing as the frequencies washed over it. The creature let out a low growl, but it didn't move. Slowly, its aggressive stance softened, its muscles relaxing as it responded to the harmonic resonance. The entire room seemed to vibrate with the energy of the device, the hum growing louder and more melodic. Zara could feel the connection now, the delicate balance between predator and environment, between danger and control. The Sharnax, once a raging beast, now stood calmly before them, its glowing eyes filled with curiosity rather than hostility. "It's working," Dr. Nex whispered, his mandibles clicking excitedly. "We're in sync with it." Zara stepped forward cautiously, her eyes never leaving the Sharnax. She extended a hand slowly, palm open, and to her amazement, the creature lowered its massive head. Its breath was hot against her skin, but there was no fear in its movements, only trust. Zara touched the Sharnax's snout, feeling the coarse texture of its scales. The moment felt surreal, as if she had bridged a gap between species that no one else had ever dared to cross. This is incredible," Harris murmured, lowering his rifle in disbelief. Quav, still wary, kept his eyes on the creature but nodded in agreement. "I've never seen anything like it." The native elder spoke softly, and Dr. Nex translated, his voice full of reverence. "He says you've proven yourselves. You've shown that humans can understand the creatures of Altaria, just as they have. The balance has been restored." Zara smiled, her hand still resting on the Sharnax's snout. "It's not about taming them through force, it's about finding harmony. We can coexist." As the Sharnax stepped back, Zara turned to her team. "This is just the beginning. If we can replicate this across the planet, we could change the way the Confederation views these creatures, and humans." Harris grinned. "We'll be legends." But Zara wasn't thinking about glory. She was thinking about the future, the possibilities that lay ahead for humans, aliens, and the untamed wilds of the galaxy. This mission had started as a dangerous gamble, but it had evolved into something far greater. They had uncovered not just a method of controlling predators, but a way of understanding the universe on a deeper level. As the team gathered their equipment and prepared to leave the chamber, Zara felt a renewed sense of purpose. The predators of Altaria were no longer their enemies. They were allies, part of a delicate ecosystem that humans could now help protect. But Zara knew that their mission wasn't over yet. There were still more creatures to understand, more challenges to face, and as the Sharnax watched them depart, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was far bigger and more mysterious than anyone had ever imagined. "Let's head back to the ship," Zara said, her voice filled with determination. "We've got work to do." As they returned to base camp, Zara and her team were met with an unexpected surprise. Standing at the entrance were representatives from the Confederation, a group of officials who had arrived while they were gone. Their polished uniforms and stern expressions contrasted sharply with the rough and weathered appearance of Zara's crew. One of the officials, a tall, gaunt figure named Ambassador Torlik, stepped forward. His cold eyes scanned the group, lingering on Zara. "Captain Zara, I was informed of your unique methods here on Altaria. We've been monitoring your progress closely." Zara didn't like the tone in his voice. The Confederation was notorious for its rigid approach to things, and she knew that any deviation from their expectations was often met with resistance. "We've made significant progress," Zara replied, keeping her voice calm. "We've established communication with the native population and have begun to understand how to control the predators without the need for force." Torlik's expression didn't change. "Control, or temporary pacification? There's a difference, Captain." Before Zara could respond, Dr. Nex stepped forward, his mandibles clicking nervously. "The native inhabitants have developed a form of coexistence with the creatures. We believe that through the use of harmonic frequencies we can." Torlik interrupted, his gaze shifting toward Nex. Yes, we've heard all about your theories, Doctor. But the Confederation isn't interested in theories. We need results. The original mission was to find a way to harness these predators for defense purposes, not to make friends with them. Zara's jaw tightened. The original mission was flawed from the start. These creatures aren't weapons. They're part of a complex ecosystem. If we try to control them through force, we'll only provoke more violence. Torlik's eyes narrowed. "That's not your decision to make." Tension rippled through the camp. Harris and Quav exchanged uneasy glances, while the alien specialists behind Torlik stood silently, their expressions unreadable. Zara took a deep breath, knowing that they were standing at a crossroads. The Confederation had one vision for the predators of Altaria, but she had another. The question was whether her team could convince them that cooperation, not control, was the key to success. "We've seen what happens when we try to force these creatures into submission," Zara said, her voice steady. "The Sharnax and Razkan could have killed us all, but instead, we found a way to communicate with them. If we can replicate that process, we could develop a symbiotic relationship that benefits both humans and the creatures." Torlik folded his arms, unimpressed. "And what happens when one of these predators decides it doesn't want to play nice anymore? How do you propose we deal with that?" Zara glanced at Dr. Nex, who gave her an encouraging nod. She stepped forward. "The answer isn't simple, but it starts with understanding. We have the technology to maintain the harmonic frequencies, and with the help of the natives, we can learn more about their behavior. The Confederation is looking for a quick solution, but there isn't one. This is about long-term sustainability, not short-term gains." For a moment, silence fell over the camp. Torlik seemed to weigh Zara's words carefully, but his skepticism was still evident. "You're asking us to trust you with a plan that hasn't been proven, based on the guidance of a primitive race that's barely survived these creatures for centuries." Quoth growled under his breath but held his tongue. Harris, however, couldn't help himself. "With all due respect, sir, I've been on a lot of missions, and I've seen a lot of things go sideways because people try to force nature into submission. Captain Zara's plan is the only one that doesn't end with more bodies in the dirt." Torlik's gaze shifted to Harris, his lips curling in a thin smile. "Spoken like a true soldier. But the Confederation doesn't have the luxury of experimenting with goodwill. We need results." Zara felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She knew that if they didn't convince Torlik and the Confederation officials, everything they had worked for could be lost. But she also knew that humans had always thrived in adversity. They didn't back down from a challenge, and they certainly didn't give up when the odds were stacked against them. "I'm not asking for blind trust," Zara said, her voice firm. "I'm asking for the chance to prove that humanity's strength doesn't come from domination. It comes from resilience, from adaptability. We've faced impossible odds before, and we've always come out stronger. Let us show you that this is no different." Torlik studied her for a long moment, the tension in the air almost unbearable. Then finally he sighed, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "Very well, Captain. You have one more chance to prove your theory. But understand this, if your plan fails, the Confederation will take over, and your methods will be reevaluated." Zara nodded, a sense of relief washing over her, though she knew it was only temporary. "Thank you, Ambassador. We won't let you down." As Torlik and the other officials left the camp, Harris let out a low whistle. "That was close. I thought for sure he was going to pull the plug." Zara shook her head. "We're not out of the woods yet. We've bought ourselves some time, but now we have to make sure this works." Quoth grunted. "No pressure, huh?" Zara turned to her team, her resolve hardening. "We'll need to accelerate our plan. Dr. Nex, continue refining the frequency generator. Harris, Quoth, we'll need to head back to the native village. We're going to need their help if we're going to pull this off." The team sprang into action, each member moving with purpose. As Zara watched them, she felt a surge of pride. This mission had thrown everything at them: dangerous predators, unexpected alliances, and now the pressure of proving themselves to the Confederation. But they hadn't faltered. They were a team, and they had each other's backs. The next few days were a blur of activity. Dr. Nex worked tirelessly on perfecting the frequency generator, making sure it could be used reliably in the field. Meanwhile, Zara and Harris made multiple trips to the native village, working to solidify the alliance with the elders. The natives were wary but intrigued by the humans' approach, and gradually they agreed to help. As the pieces began to fall into place, Zara knew they were nearing the moment of truth. They had only one shot to prove that humans could coexist with the predators of Altaria, and if they failed, the consequences would be severe. The dawn light crept over Eltaria, casting long shadows through the dense jungle and illuminating the path ahead. Zora stood at the edge of the clearing, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Today would be the culmination of everything they had worked for, a demonstration of the harmonic frequency method, using both human technology and the ancient knowledge of the natives. The Confederation officials, including Ambassador Torlik, had gathered in a makeshift observation platform, along with a handful of skeptical alien specialists. Zara felt their eyes on her, waiting for a reason to dismiss her plan as nothing more than an idealistic experiment. She couldn't afford any mistakes. "Are you ready for this?" Harris asked, his voice low but steady. Zara took a deep breath. "Ready as I'll ever be." The plan was simple, yet incredibly risky. The team would lead the most dangerous creature on the planet, the Draskor, to an open field, where they would attempt to establish a connection using the newly refined frequency generator. If they succeeded, it would prove that humans had found a way to coexist with the predators of Eltaria. If they failed, well, failure wasn't an option. The Draskor was a legend on Eltaria, known as the Emperor of the Wilds. It was massive, with scales like dark iron and a roar that could shake the ground. No one had ever successfully approached it and lived to tell the tale. Yet, here they were, attempting not just to approach it, but to tame it. "Team, let's move," Zara ordered. Dr. Nex and Quor stayed behind at the observation point to monitor the generator, while Zara and Harris made their way to the designated meeting place with the natives. The elder who had helped them before was waiting, flanked by several of his kin. They carried with them a series of ancient devices similar to the one in the stone chamber, each tuned to emit specific harmonic frequencies. "Are you sure about this?" Harris whispered as they approached. "No," Zara admitted, "but we have no choice." The elder spoke softly, and Dr. Nex translated through the comms. "He says the Draskor is close. If we're not careful, it will sense our fear and see us as a threat." "Then let's not give it a reason to," Zara replied, forcing her voice to remain steady. They reached the field, a wide expanse surrounded by thick jungle. The air was tense with anticipation. Zara adjusted her headset and gave the signal to Dr. Nex. "Activate the generators." The hum of the frequency devices filled the air, blending with the sounds of the jungle. The natives joined in, using their own devices to amplify the effect. Zara felt the vibrations in her bones, a rhythmic pulse that seemed to resonate with the very essence of the planet. For a moment, nothing happened. The field was silent, save for the low hum of the generators. But then the ground began to shake. Trees at the far end of the clearing swayed violently, their branches snapping as something massive pushed its way through. The Draskor emerged, its dark scales glistening in the morning light. It was even more enormous than Zara had imagined, easily 3 times the size of the Sharnax. Its eyes, burning like molten gold, fixed on the humans and natives gathered in the field. Zara's heart pounded in her chest. "Hold your ground," she whispered. The creature took a step forward, the earth trembling beneath its weight. It sniffed the air, its nostrils flaring as it picked up the scent of the gathered group. Zara felt a bead of sweat run down her temple, but she refused to move. "Frequency is stable," Dr. Nex reported through the comms. "But we're reaching the upper limit. Any higher, and we risk destabilizing the field." "Keep it steady," Zara ordered, her voice barely a whisper. The Draskor let out a low rumble, its eyes narrowing. For a terrifying moment, Zara thought it would charge. Harris tensed beside her, his hand instinctively tightening around his weapon. But Zara shook her head. "No weapons," she murmured. The creature continued to advance, its footsteps sending vibrations through the ground. It stopped a mere 10 feet away from Zara, its enormous head lowering to her level. Zara could feel its breath, hot and heavy, as it sniffed the air around her. "Now," Zara whispered. "Dr. Nex, increase the frequency, gently." The generator's hum grew louder, the harmonic resonance intensifying. The Drasko's eyes widened slightly, its head tilting as if listening to the sound. Zara slowly extended her hand, her palm open and facing the creature. She knew it was a risk. A single wrong move could turn this delicate moment into a disaster. The Drasko hesitated, its massive claws digging into the ground. Then, to Zara's astonishment, it lowered its head further, allowing her to touch its snout. The scales were rough, like ancient stone, but there was a warmth beneath them that surprised her. The creature let out a low, rumbling purr, the sound vibrating through her entire body. Unbelievable. Harris breathed, his voice filled with awe. Ambassador Torlek watched from the observation platform, his expression unreadable. The other officials whispered among themselves, their skepticism slowly giving way to astonishment. Dr. Nex's voice came through the comms, barely able to contain his excitement. The readings are holding steady. We're in complete synchronization. Zara smiled, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. She turned to the natives, who watched the scene unfold with expressions of quiet approval. They had spent generations living in harmony with these creatures, and now, for the first time, humanity was beginning to understand what that meant. The Drasko let out a low huff, its breath stirring the air around them. It was no longer an enemy, no longer a force to be feared. It was a partner, a symbol of what could be achieved through understanding and cooperation. Zara took a step back, giving the Drasko space to rise to its full height. It turned its gaze toward the observation platform, its eyes meeting Ambassador Torlek's. For a moment, the entire field was silent, as if the world itself held its breath. Torlek stood slowly, his expression a mixture of disbelief and something Zara hadn't expected: respect. "Captain Zara," he said, his voice carrying across the clearing, "it appears I was mistaken about your methods." Zara nodded, feeling a sense of pride swell within her. "We've shown that we don't need to dominate the creatures of Eltaria to coexist. All it takes is a willingness to listen, to understand." Torlek's gaze lingered on the Drasko, then shifted back to Zara. "This changes everything. The Confederation will need to reevaluate its approach, not just to Eltaria, but to all worlds like it. Your team has done the impossible." As the Drasko slowly retreated into the jungle, the crowd erupted into murmurs of excitement and disbelief. Zara turned to her team, her smile widening. "We did it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Harris laughed, clapping her on the back. "You're going to be in every history book from here to the next galaxy." Quoth grunted, though there was a hint of a smile on his face. Not bad for a human. Dr. Nex was practically vibrating with excitement. This is only the beginning. There's so much more we can learn, so much more we can achieve. Zara nodded, feeling a sense of hope and possibility that she hadn't felt in a long time. They had come to Eltaria to tame the galaxy's most dangerous predators, but in the end, they had achieved something far greater. They had proven that humanity's strength didn't lie in domination or control. It lay in resilience, adaptability, and the willingness to understand and connect with the world around them. As the team made their way back to the ship, Zara couldn't help but smile. The mission had changed her, changed all of them. They had faced the impossible and come out stronger, more united than ever before. And somewhere, deep in the wilds of Eltaria, the Drasko let out a final echoing roar, a reminder that even in the most dangerous places, there was always the potential for harmony.